Hey everyone, Matt and Alex with Building the Dream Duluth here, and we are sitting today with Jason Malmstrom from Malmstrom Mortgage Group. We're going to dive a little bit in today to talk about what it takes to be a successful loan officer. So Jason, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and kind of where you came from?
Sure. Well, good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Yeah, you know what happens in this industry is you start out trying to figure out, is it something you want to do? And really the thing that I started with years and years ago when I started Wells Fargo is figuring out that, I wanted to help people. I wanted to understand what their needs were when it came to figuring out, how to get a mortgage, how to buy a house. My experience really started from me going through the process of trying to buy a house and like the industry is that, people have challenges in trying to find housing. It's really
a difficult process.
It's a difficult process and really isn't all that much different than it was 20 years ago when I got in the industry. The key factor when looking at trying to figure out how do you, help somebody is you need to have that mindset. So going back a little bit further before I even got in the mortgage business, I wanted to become a mortgage advisor or a mortgage broker or a stockbroker. And so I really didn't know what a mortgage broker was, but I had heard from some friends that it was a great experience to help people buy homes. And I was like, all right. So I actually went and worked on getting all of my licensing to actually become a stockbroker. Before I got married and had kids, I wanted to go out to New York and this is my dream. Go to college, go out and be on the exchange and.
Wow.
I had a chance to tour Chicago and actually the financial district there during college, which was really interesting, which really kind of forced me into that realm. It's like, yeah, this is what I want to do. Didn't exactly know where, how, like a lot of us when we're growing up, you're not 100% sure what direction you're going to go, but you have an idea. Mm-hmm. So as we went through that process, I figured it out. Went into telecom and spent a number of years in telecom, high-end stuff, building out actually the very first high-speed data service. So your high-speed data service that you know today is what we started back then.
Wow!
So we were the first deployment in the state of Minnesota, and we actually sold that service across the country to small cable operators. So it was kind of intriguing. That's how I got my start in the industry. And then I said, I want to not travel as much, stay home and. Got married, started having kids, and was like, well, maybe I should do something different. So that's how I got into, the mortgage space. And a job opportunity came up. My loan officer that was currently working with me and my wife on our house build, because we, like everybody, was trying to find a house, couldn't find a house, and the market was even worse then than it is now. So people that are having trouble finding a house now,
no, you're not alone.
You're not alone. It was worse back then. And so what we did is we ended up buying a piece of property and we started building. So we actually built a house and went through that whole process. And the loan officer was helping me and said, hey, you'd seem like you'd be really good in sales and you've got a great ability to chat with people and help people. I said, yeah. And so he introduced me to the ranch manager and I took a job and started there. And that's how I got my start in as a loan officer. Learned a lot from the folks at Wells Fargo. They had a great training program many years ago, and it helped me launch my career. And I think as we were talking just a little bit off camera, one of the things that differentiates us is figuring out how to do what others aren't willing to do. Mm-hmm. And that is the hours, the time, all of those things. And it's a balancing act. So yeah.
And I can personally attest to that. I think we've done, 7 different mortgages now at this point. Yeah. And yeah, you're always there. Someone on your team is very responsive, representative, like it's been an experience unlike any other.
And that's what it takes, is providing a service that, especially in an industry where, real estate agents are working nights and weekends, right? I referenced earlier, I had talked with a friend that said, if I ever have he was a real estate agent, and if I ever have a deal, I'll call Jason, because it doesn't matter if it's 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. He's available, and he's going to be there to answer the phone, which is probably not the case with all loan officers. They might 5 o'clock hits and they're cutting out for the day, but you have to be there when the consumers need you, which might be 8 o'clock at night or on a weekend or something like that.
And that is probably one of the things that we really worked on early on in my career, at least, is figuring out that balance of, as you said, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I mean, there were days that we were working, and still do from time to time, 12 a.m. to, you're up in the office at 6. I mean, it just happens. But I mean, it's like that, I think, in any industry. But the key factor is that ours is really focused. Our widget is, we're selling money. We're trying to help people find homes. And, we're trying to build that American dream. Like, you're building the dream Duluth, right? Or anywhere.
Not quite building the dream America yet, but we're getting there.
Well, you're getting there.
Franchise opportunities.
Franchise, right. But that opportunity really is what we're working on, which is to figure out how do we help people achieve their dreams. And part of that dream is home ownership. So ultimately putting together the right systems and processes ahead of time. And it's not just a one-person show. It really can't be. You have to build a team and an organization, and you have to have great leadership in order to be able to make sure that not only if I'm handing something off, or a loan officer that works with us is handing something off to another party, we want to make sure that they're still taken care of. The same level of expertise and same level of workmanship goes into it, and so that way the transaction still looks seamless and feels seamless to our clients. One of the things that we worked on several years ago is to become actually certified mortgage advisors. So ultimately, it's another level of expertise. It's something that only a small percentage of loan officers in the country do, and it acts and looks and feels very much like being a financial advisor, except just in the mortgage world.
Focusing solely on people's dream to buy a home.
Correct.
Yep.
And being able to, put together, action plans and service plans, and all of the things that consumers need when they're looking to buy a home, and even after. So it really comes in more so after than even before, because ultimately you're setting somebody up for success as they're walking through the process of buying a home, but you're really setting them up for success 6 months, 12 months, 18 months after. So it really is having that budgetary plan, that vision to help somebody actually set them up, because ultimately a lot of lenders will just be, oh yeah, you can afford it, and you go out and buy the house,
and a
then
few
your house
years
poor.
later,
right? But then your house poor. And I know so many people that are in that, have been in that situation, have come to us, hey, can you help us? Yeah, I mean, there are ways to do some things, but I mean, it all has to come together, and you have to have an action plan. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that we've seen over the years.
Yeah, and I recall, I mean, I bought my house in 2019, and I came to you, and I was 24, 25 years old, and I don't know how to, it's not like going to the grocery store, there's a lot.
Looking at the labels.
It's a lot. Right. It's a lot more complex.
Here's an apple. Here's an orange.
Right.
A lot of lenders are created that way. So.
And just being able to, I mean, you did that for me as well, as looking at all the finances and saying, hey, this is what you can do to help out, and that's a very valuable thing to offer in your position, to be able to help people from beginning to end. Like, not just, hey, you can afford this, but here's what you should do, and then you go through the process of acquiring the loan, and then here's what you should do after. That was incredibly valuable for me as somebody who knew nothing at the time.
And for how the gravity of that situation that you're making, like you're tying your hands together for 30 years, you should make the right decision.
Yeah.
The interesting thing, and this is where I think the advisor part really comes in, is that the average consumer spends maybe a little bit more time now, but the average number that I've seen, at least, is somewhere about 5 to 6 years in their mortgage. Not necessarily their house, but their mortgage. So ultimately what we've done over the years is we perpetuated the home ownership level by offering a longer term repayment plan. It's really what it is. And that, it's kind of like fortunately, it's kind of like a car loan. I mean, but you have an asset, not a depreciating asset, but an asset. So it's a different philosophy, a different mentality when it comes to figuring out what works best to be able to get somebody into housing, how to figure out what is the best scenario for them, and long term, how do we make sure that they're in a great position, short term and long term. The gravity of the situation, as you talk about, I mean, they're tying themselves to this 30-year mortgage. It's interesting because a lot of folks don't understand how to use the equity. And I just saw a statistic this morning. We're somewhere between 35 and 36 trillion dollars in equity position right now across the country. It's the highest it's ever been. So for those who are looking at home ownership, or those who are currently in home ownership, looking at do I refinance? Do I save money? All of those things. It's a great time to be having those conversations. And if you're not having at least annual conversations with your mortgage advisor, you don't have the right mortgage advisor. They're loan officers. They're schlepping paper and they're selling loans. It's a different philosophy. So, if I can advise anybody on anything, the key would be to make sure that you're with the right folks. They're going to treat you the right way, and they're going to provide you the advice not only now, but a year from now, 2 years from now, or 7 years from now.
I mean, just looking at my own portfolio too, like you can't eat equity. There's got to be a way that you can access it, and sure, it looks good on paper, but if you're trying to actively do it as a business, or even if you're using it as your own personal asset and think, oh, I could use a new kitchen, like home equity lines of credit and stuff like that could be your, answer.
They very well could be, and a lot of people over the I would say the last 4 years took advantage of lower interest rates. Obviously, the federal government came in. They supported, obviously during times of need. They supported us in being able to get lower interest rates so consumers could refinance and put themselves in a better position. That was all subsidized money, which is okay, but that's obviously why we've seen rates increase, and now hopefully they're coming back down because things have balanced out a little bit on the balance sheet. But as I look at what the market is going to do and what we're going to see in the future, part of that is this equity piece. Where does that come in? I mean, a lot of people were in a cash position over the course of the last 4 years. There was excess cash in the market space, but that asset is depleted. I mean, it's nearly gone as far as the asset size because people are using up cash. They had excess cash because they weren't doing anything during a period of time, and because of that, they increased their asset level. Well, now that's come back down. It's a tolerable level. At least that's what the federal government wants us to look at. But that asset from cash has turned into equity because home prices and home values have continued to increase. Even though that we've seen inflation come into the market space, that is still actually going up and increasing. So we're in a position where there's a tremendous amount of equity. So from a consumer standpoint, how do they take advantage of that, right?
Can't eat it.
No, you can't eat it. So the question is how do we put that into perspective? How do we use that? And how do we make that work for the average consumer? Well, if you have a home today, the great thing is you probably have equity. Even if you bought in the last couple of years, it's continued to go and grow. And one of those opportunities is home equity, lines of credit or refinancing. For those who don't necessarily want to, lose a 2 or a 3 or a 4% interest rate, you can look at doing a line of credit. The line of credit taps into and allows you to do different things. As an example, some clients that I know have done exactly this. They bought a house, they put themselves in a position where there was equity, and then they needed to, refinance, take out, or get a line of credit. They used that to elevate and buy another property, and then that property itself turned into, now we want to take these 2 properties and refinance them and put into a short-term rental opportunity. So they put themselves in a short-term rental, and now they have residual income coming from these short-term rentals. Now they're using that to buy more. So really, it's a short-term plan, but it turns into a long-term vision. And that long-term vision allows people to put themselves in a great position, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And it's not an overnight success. I mean, sometimes it can be, but in a lot of instances, it's time, it's hard work and effort that go into it.
So on the topic of hard work and effort and backtracking to how much your culture of your business is around being available when people need you, how do you instill that in the rest of your team? How do you ask that of your team, or do they just realize that that's what's needed to get the job done?
Yeah, it isn't forced by any means. Obviously, we try to find the right individuals to be part of the organization, to be part of the company, because ultimately the biggest thing that we see is that it has to be the right culture, it has to be the right fit. It's not right for everybody.
Not everybody probably wants to answer the phone at 8 p.m. like we talked about, and they're not made to, that they're happy at 8 to 5, and that's fine for some people. But if you want to continue to grow and be successful, you have to, like you said, be willing to do what others won't do.
The art of the industry, I think, is creating a picture of helping others, and if you put others first, you will have success.
That's our motto.
And it's timely, I know. But anyway, part of that whole concept, though, is do you have to work a Sunday? Well, sometimes you do. I mean, normal people don't work just normal hours today. I mean, it's a varied amount. I mean, I've got friends that start at 3 a.m. and they're done by 11. Or they're done at they start at 4 and they're done at noon. Whatever that combination is.
The traditional workday has certainly changed.
Traditional workday has changed, and it changes whatever industry you're in. Sometimes you're working overnight. Sometimes you're working, long days, long hours, whatever that is. The American society, I think, has really, perpetuated the idea that you got to work everywhere and all the time. My idea is this: is that you got to work where you need to work, which is being efficient, but being where you need to be. Which means that sometimes during the day, if you've got a break, you can take that break. You don't have to be staring down a computer
all the time,
right? Because you set yourself up not only with good leadership and good staff and good team members, people that are part of the family, really. They become part of the family. That's a huge piece. But it allows you to be flexible on what you do. But then technology comes in.
That's a huge part.
And that's, I know, something we were talking about, off camera as well, is just some of the technology that wasn't there 20 years ago when I first, became a loan officer, to today, where I'm leading an organization, still writing loans, still helping people do what they want to do, but it's at a different level. I'm advising at a different level today than I ever have, which allows consumers, even like yourselves, who are so kind enough to grant us the opportunity to do some business together. It offers us the opportunity to have different level conversations. And still everything processes and seems like it flows smoothly, even though there are lots of parts and pieces to it behind the scenes. But as I look at the technology step, which is, I think, something that will be becoming even more and more important as we look into the future, to streamline some of that process. Because as I look at it, we have a certain set cost to produce a mortgage today, like anything. I mean, you have, if you're selling a widget, it's going to cost you X to create it, and you need to sell it for a profit to be able to be a profitable business. The same thing goes in the mortgage industry. It's no different. And so what I'm trying to do, and what I think a lot of other industry veterans are trying to do, is figure out how we lower that cost. And it's the implementation of some technology, either at the forefront of the application process or during that process phase, from start to finish, to streamline that process, reduce the amount of time that it takes, and actually reduce the cost. So as I look at that, what happens and what does that offer the consumer? It offers the consumer an opportunity to actually have better interest rates, have a better experience, and then it offers us the opportunity to go out and actually find new business, find more business, and help more people. Because that's all we're in. I mean, that's the business we're in, is helping people. And that's what I started out with, 20 years ago. I wanted to figure out how I can help people. This is a way that I feel that we can help people even more.
And if you can, reduce cost, increase the time, you're that much more advantageous and beneficial than your competitors.
Right.
I mean, you have, that's so much more valuable than just somebody who's not leaning into some of the technological advantages of where things are going.
And I think you're right. I mean, one of the things that we're striving to do is we're trying to not be bleeding edge, but cutting edge.
Yeah.
And that puts us in a position, I think, where we can be successful at finding new business, new opportunities, and driving more business. Now, it's not to say that others aren't out there trying to do the same thing, because I know that our competition, banks and independent mortgage banks and mortgage brokers are all doing the same thing. They're trying to find different ways. However, I think that we're ahead in a lot of instances from what I hear, in the fact of where we're going with some of these things that we're already implementing into our systems. So again, I think we're cutting edge, not bleeding edge when it comes to these things, because I want them to work.
Yeah.
I want them to.
The mistakes are going to come first. Wait till things
most
get
of them, at
smooth.
least.
Yeah, some of the, some of
and a lot.
and maybe they have.
Well, they have. And they're not going to continue. I mean,
Nobody's perfect.
You think of the Wright brothers. What do? They created a plane, right? It wasn't the first one, but it was one of them.
Well, eventually it worked.
Right. Eventually it worked.
So when you look at the dichotomy of, you can change so many levers and move so many things, there's one camp of the mortgage business where you take that personal relationship out of it, where it's click button, get mortgage. how do you see those
There's
people?
somebody with that motto.
No names, no brand deals.
I don't have a branded deal with them, so all right.
You mock. But so how do you see customer sentiment shifting? Do you think people will go towards that because like
The convenience, or
yeah, like with car sales, like they hate like dealing with salespeople or whatever. Whereas as personal as a mortgage deal should be, do you think people are going to realize that they're not serviced by that and then go for the other camp, or do you think people just want that instant gratification of push and done?
So it's interesting. As every generation has come up when it comes to the industry, the one common denominator that I've found at least is this: before they do anything, they want to have a conversation. Gen Z, millennials, what you name it. There still is something tying them because it's a huge purchase and people don't know what it really involves.
The biggest purchase that people make.
There is so much information as well as misinformation, on the internet today about the systems, the process, and everything else. I think it's a finite position, and that will allow us to be a leader in it when it comes to using technology, but still having a one-to-one relationship, because that's what it comes down to. I mean, you still have people involved in the transaction. Will it eventually get to a place where it's just push a button and you get a mortgage? I don't believe so, at least not for quite a few years. There are too many intricacies involved in the process that we're not technologically there to be able to just say, yeah, you're approved and you get a mortgage and you can close tomorrow. Just it doesn't work that way. Now, as we were talking off camera also earlier, we were talking about how do we elevate that game now to make it a streamlined process for everybody. In instances, I mean, can we close loans extremely quickly? We can, because we've set up the systems and processes behind it, not only with technology but with people, to close loans in a minimum of 7 days. So that's a minimum we can close the loan.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, well, it's crazy. And it takes a lot of effort from everybody flowing together, including consumers, including other parties, from sellers to a realtor that's involved, to insurance companies, you name it. I mean, there's so many different facets and different verticals.
If somebody isn't on time, that pushes the
That
day back.
handoff doesn't happen.
Right.
So, I mean, and we have been known not only in the veteran industry, but also in every mortgage vertical to be able to close loans quickly because we have the systems in place. And do I feel that the consumer is going to want to go to a fully fledged online system, not having conversation? I don't know that. And the reason I say that is because, like a financial advisor, you still want to have a conversation and know what's going on, because the average consumer doesn't understand, if I'm investing in a stock, or if I'm investing in an ETF, or whatever that might be. It's the same thing here. Am I getting an FHA mortgage and conventional mortgage? What is it, and what does it do for me? And people don't know that there are different ways that they can invest and also pay off their debts faster. So I mean, there's just a whole gamut of things that a computer is going to be able to tell them. And and this is what I found, we've split test some of this to give us some insight as to what that truly looks like from the consumer standpoint. Because I want to know. I mean, if we're putting something out as far as a product or a service, I want to make sure that they're having the experience that I expect that they're going to have. So we beta tested some of this, and we're still fine tuning some of that. And I think it's going to be a while before we get it correct, but we're working on it. But from the consumer standpoint, it gets down to, like you. I mean, as an example, when you have an issue or you've got a question, what do you want? You want to be able to get an answer, right? Prime example, I had an issue with a product that I bought or my wife bought, whatever it was, and I had to call, or I tried to get on chat to solve the issue, and it's an AI bot, AI chat, right? And literally, it was over 50 minutes going back and forth on the AI chat. So I mean, this is technology at its finest, right? It's supposed to save time. Not supposed to have to make phone calls, right? It's supposed to be able to solve your dilemma. Okay, 50 minutes, and I wasn't able to solve it. I made a phone call because I was tired of waiting. I made a phone call, and within 10 minutes, I had the answer, and I had the problem solved. So, is there a fine line? Is there an ability to use technology in the industry to solve some of the challenges? Yes. I think it goes across the board, for whatever industry you're in, whatever, widget that you're selling. But I think that there is still a finite position that you need individuals. You need people with expertise and knowledge and experience to help you through the process.
And we're big proponents of AI assisted. AI can't replace a lot of the stuff, but because garbage in is garbage out. If you don't know what you're trying to put as an input to guide it, you're not going to get the desired result.
No, and I think that's probably the biggest thing that we've seen is that it's not a full-fledged,
Solution. Right.
No, it really is
a tool.
It's a tool. But if we're in the position where we can use those tools in a small subsection of the process to, number one, streamline it, to make the process better, and to lower costs, it turns that we put back then to the consumer a better product at a lower price, at a better efficiency. What does that do? Well, it offers us the opportunity to find more business, provide a better value to the consumer, and obviously better relationships because it's less of a hassle. Buying a house is not cheap by any means, especially today. Prices have gone up, but costs associated with buying a house have also gone up, from lending to appraisals to your title work to make sure you can actually have ownership in a property. All of those come in at a price. And especially now, I look at insurance costs. I mean, insurance costs in a lot of states have gone crazy, crazy, and it's because of some of the things that are going on behind the scenes, weather related, whatever it might be. But in a lot of states that we do business in, some of the insurance companies have even
pulled out entirely.
Yep. So it's becoming a little bit more of a challenge.
And again, going back to having the personal relationship, when you have challenges, and every scenario is different for each consumer buying a home.
They call it personal finance for a reason.
Exactly, right. And having someone to ask those questions who can help navigate, again, as opposed to the chat bot or the even just the FAQ on a website. I mean, having a real person who's knowledgeable and educated on the subject is going to put a lot more confidence in the consumer, and just gives them better peace of mind that they've got someone alongside of them to help navigate the whole process of home ownership.
I think a lot of people have put too much emphasis on computers being correct and accurate. I think there is an avenue for that to be part of the transaction. But if you're looking for answers from an FAQ or a computer that's generated, granted, it may be a little bit faster in spitting out an answer. However, if you get to the right advisor, in this case, what we're talking about, that answer should be fairly quick to be provided to you anyway.
And then additional answers and additional questions that may stem from that.
Correct. Because usually one question leads to 10. It does. It really does. And that's okay. I mean, that's what we want. We want educated individuals buying homes. Because it's not during the initial phase, it's the after. What happens after? That's what everybody worries about. Because especially first-time home buyers, I mean, it's a nerve-wracking experience. It's like, all right, I'm buying a house, I'm spending how much money?
It's all brand new the first time you do it.
It's all brand new.
You mean I got to talk to this person to get this before we can move forward?
Right. No. And remember, the insurance, I need that at least 2 weeks prior, 2 days before. Did you get your insurance yet? We've kind of done away with that because we help with those things now. But yeah, I mean, that's just one of those.
And those are part of the systems that you developed. You've been in the industry long enough to realize these are some of the hang-ups, some of the pitfalls, and you're able to guide people through that process more efficiently.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think it helps people feel more at ease, much more comfortable when it comes to the buying process and spending, $100,000 or $2 or $3 or $4, whatever the number is. It's still a lot of money. And for most individuals, that we've spoken to over the years, it's a huge process for them to understand, hey, you know what, I got to repay this money, and it's a lot. So we want to make sure that the repayment options are the best for them. It's not about, the interest rate or the loan or the structure. It's about their ability to repay. Because ultimately, it comes down to budgets. It comes down to plans. And if they don't have that, they can put themselves in a really bad position.
On the top of putting yourself in a good position, you've been a very successful entrepreneur, multiple different facets, exits, what have you. How have you kept family as one of your priorities when you're this busy and this available?
Yeah, family has always been super important to me. When I started as a loan officer years ago, one of the things that my wife and I decided that we were going to do is that we were going to make sure that no matter what, family came first. And so whether or not I was working a weekend, I'd take time off on another day to make up for that. And as we were speaking before, I don't know that I missed many events for my kids growing up throughout the years. And that was the biggest thing for me is that I wanted to make sure that I was at everything. I mean, my dad, luckily enough, both my parents were in education, so they had summers off. My dad was a principal and I think he was assistant superintendent. He still worked throughout the summer, but he still took time and was there and made sure that he spent time with me. So for me, I wanted to do the same thing with my kids. I'm not in education by any means, so I don't get summers off.
Sort of. Well, sort of education.
Well,
just a different type.
That's a whole nother topic. But I mean, you didn't have the dedicated, month and a half or 2 months off, whatever teachers get, to just do whatever. And so my focus and my philosophy was that I needed to spend time focusing on, not only relationship, but family, making sure I was there, all of those things. So whether or not it was going to church on a Sunday morning and then going out to an open house, because a lot of loan officers don't do open houses. And for a couple of years, we didn't really have any here in the last 5 years.
Things moving too quick.
Things move too quick. But now that avenue is actually reopening again because things are a little bit slower in the market space for selling homes, and the transaction is maybe a little bit faster. But overall, the thing that I've found is that you have to dedicate your time. So be focused, be intentional, and guess what? You'll have success not only in business, but in family. And to me, those are probably the most important things is making sure that I was there for my family. Is it easy? No, not by any means. I mean, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of work to make sure that you can provide for family, do everything you need to do, and still be successful at your job and create an opportunity for the consumer to have a great experience. Because without the consumer, you don't have everything. And without sales, you don't have everything. I mean, everything is driven around sales. So you want to make sure that the sales process goes well.
You have to have a strategy and you have to plan ahead. I mean, I think those are the two big things to be available for those events and those family things as well.
One of the things that I learned years ago, you often refocus on your business, and you have to do that, I think, at least quarterly. We started a quarterly group, mastermind group, let's just call it, years ago. And part of that is breaking down our business every quarter. A couple of years we did it like every 6 months or whatever else that goes, but try to do it quarterly. And essentially it's just breaking down what's going on. And these are not competitors. Well, I mean, they're competitors, but they're in different areas. And I'm not afraid to break down the business and say, here's my wins, here's my failures, here's my losses, here's what we're doing. Here's from a business standpoint, here's what we have going on. Because ultimately it makes the most sense if we're trying to break down and figure out, all right, this is working here, this is not working here. How do we help each other out? So it's an avenue for us to say, you know what, open houses are coming back. I mean, I've got a great open house strategy that helps realtors bring in more traffic, and they're selling more homes because of this. Oh, great! Teach me, what's working, what's happening, because that way we can take that back to our referral partners and say, look, out in the West Coast, this is working. Out in the East Coast, this is working. Midwest, down south, here's what's working. How do we help local partners elevate their business? It's not just, hey, I got a referral for you. It's, tell you what, we've broken down business ideas and strategies and plans, and it's the implementation of those things that I think is helping us to continue to grow across the country. And it's not just local in Duluth, but I mean, it's across the country. And for me, that's been the biggest, I think, advantage. And it allows me to actually then take a little bit more time and focus on, the family side, because ultimately I know that I can teach another loan officer, and I can, teach, in mass, one of the things that is so important, which is the education part. How do you educate each other? Well, it's experience, right? I mean, here's what's working. So that's what we've done. Over time, over the last 15 or so years, as we've kind of built out this model, one of the things that we've found that's been successful is that, that mastermind group. And, if I have any advice for, other people that are looking at getting in the industry, and my son and I have actually talked about this actually as, as a potential. I mean, he's got, a couple of years left of high school, and he's got, some years in college yet, but he's like, I might want to do what you do. And, how would I go about that? So new loan officers today, I think, are very interesting because it's an opportunity to teach some old ways, but use technology in new ways to actually enhance their business from the beginning. It takes a while to get anything going. I mean, as entrepreneurs yourselves, you know what goes into building a business. And that's what we built. We built a business over these years. And, I'm very proud of some of the things we've done. And, frankly, we've had some failures too. I mean, that's what happens is you win and you lose and you learn from that. And that's what helps not only, us as entrepreneurs, but it helps our clients have a better experience, is that experience. And the lessons we've learned.
And that's why we put this whole segment together, is sharing those wins, the unfortunate losses, and how you've learned from them and how it's made you a better entrepreneur in the process.
Yeah, and the biggest thing that I get back to, though, you asked about about family and how I've separated that. It's just really being separate. So I mean, do you work those weekends and take those calls? Sure. Is it at the expense of anything? I don't believe so, because it's finite and it's short and it's intentional. So that, to me, has probably been the biggest success that I've figured out over the years. Now, when I first started, it was like, okay, I'll do anything and everything, and it was crazy. However, my hours really haven't changed, but the focus and intentions of what that conversation might be has. So I put, I've been able to, blessed enough to be able to have individuals that have partnered with me, around me, to actually create the organization, create the company, and create the emphasis on the consumer having a great experience. Even though I'm not working 24/7, even though it might feel that way, I'm not, because I have a great resources, technology, and people that are part of that process. So the intentions of creating a better family environment, I think, is key. Now, unfortunately I've seen individuals in not only in this industry but others not have that focus, and they've lost some things. They've lost family and those types of things, and I think it can happen in any industry. And so if I were to provide any advice or direction, it's have the intentions of focusing on your family, focusing on work, and keeping them separate as much as possible. So.
And honestly, like from personal experience, that was one of my biggest fears of jumping into entrepreneurship. Is I knew that I wanted to do this, but I didn't know if it was a selfish cause. Like, how do I balance those? And looking up to you, like, really reassured me that it is possible. And there's a few other people in my network that I was able to pull nuggets from as well. But I've seen others that it's just fallen apart, and it's sad. But I knew there was people that I could rely on that were doing the right thing.
Yeah. And as you know, I mean, it's not easy. I mean, you've got family that's growing and young, and it takes effort and work to do that. But again, can it be done? Yeah, absolutely. In this industry, I think it's very rewarding, or it can be. Not only if you focus on it the right way. There, years ago, as we all have read about, is some of the Big Short. I mean, obviously that was it's a great story, great book, and it happened. I mean, I lived through it, and it was not an easy time by any means to figure out what direction we needed to go. And I was really young in the industry at the time. Not that I'm old now, but I'm just saying.
What a time to cut your teeth, right?
Right. I'm just saying, time to cut your teeth. So it was interesting to go through that period of time, and it taught me a lot of lessons about what to do and what not to do, and how to be timely with what you do every single day. And so ultimately, as I look at the next evolution of where we're going, and what you take from then to go forward. And as we were talking earlier, what does that next evolution look like? I think as we go, I mean, there's technology involved, there's still people involved, but as I look at technology and again being on the cutting edge, how do we make sure that the consumer still has a great experience? They get the technology that they need and want, because, frankly, most people are where? They're on their phone, right? I mean, every single day. I mean, that's what people spend their time on, is they spend time on their phone. So we need to be there because they're there. So what applications can we apply from technology? What applications can I apply from media sources? So whether or not it's a media outlet like this, with your division, your company. I mean, it's a great resource. Social media aspects. I mean, the traditional method of delivering ads today has changed significantly. The vast majority, there's a study that I found the other day that people were in a position where they had looked at new advertising methods and methodologies, and one of them that came up was just ads directly to your phone. I mean, it wasn't even, they're not all digital, all geofencing, all everything, nothing to do with traditional media. And to me, I see that coming, but there's still a method, I think, that works to get your name out there, to help individuals who are looking at building their mortgage business, let's just say. How do they grow their mortgage business? I think it's a multitude of ways. You're traditional, you're non-traditional, and obviously social events, something like this. But I think one of the bigger things is, and one of the areas that I concentrated on when I was younger, is getting into networks and building your sphere. And one of those is, I think you still have to be involved in your community in some way, shape, or form. So whether or not that's some ancillary club or organization that provides value back to the community, I think it's a huge piece. Whether or not you want to oversee and be an advisor to kids or organizations that involve kids, I think that's an important piece, especially if you've got a family and those types of things. That's how I think you can develop your business, because people then get to know who you are at the core level. And that core level really then translates, if you do it well, into what your business methodology is. And the business methodology today is so valuable as we continue to grow out and build out and see all this technology out there. Your methodology, your individual, is still going to be key. So, we had talked about, push button and get some things really quick. Well, you think what's happened with Amazon, right? Just as an example. Huge organization, done a great job at supplying what? Products at the snap of your finger, right? That's a product mix that people like. The challenge with turning that into what we do is difficult, because there are things to it that just don't work at the snap of your finger. You can't just create something and send it off to you, package it up, wrap it up, make it look nice in a bow, and send it off to you. Here's your mortgage.
2 days or it's free.
Right. 2 days or it's free. Doesn't quite work that way. Now, I'm not saying that it won't get there, but I mean, we have a long way to go in order to be able to put that into the consumer's hands where it's actually accurate, because there are checks and balances that need to go into the process to make sure the consumer is protected. That's the biggest thing that I see.
And even as we are an advertising and marketing agency, and I'll still tell people all the time, the best, your network and your sphere is always going to be your greatest source of of business, because it's people who know, like, and trust you. The next, probably even before any type of advertising, the next closest thing for business growth is any organic content, whether that be the podcasts you do, the things you talk about, or just the way you speak about your business in an organic sense that other people can be entertained or educated by, versus any kind of sponsored ad. So it's the way that you position the business for everyone to see.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, as a media company, what you guys do, the traditionalists are, your cable companies, your TV companies, your broadcast companies that are doing those types of things. That's still there, and it's still relevant, because there is still a large subsection of individuals that still get their news from traditional media outlets, which is great. However, the vast majority of your new generations are looking at different avenues. I mean, YouTube has grown crazy in the last few years because of the content that's been put out by individuals.
You can learn anything. You can be educated
Right.
on any topic. From
Hey, I'm a user of YouTube. I mean, hey, how do I drain this? How do I fix that? I'm like, man, I should probably be creating these videos. I mean, I've done this before, but I mean, I just, you can't figure it out and say, all right, YouTube it and figure it out.
then you get 9-minute video and you got it all figured out.
Right. And it's like, man, that doesn't look like mine though. I don't understand that. And where's this part go? So,
Why do I have all these extra bolts?
right. But think about that in relation to this business and mortgage business. All right, where does this go? Where does this go? What do I do with that? That's leftover. I don't know. It's a very similar thing. It's just like, all right, can technology help us? Yeah, I mean, it can help us in any business, in any industry. If I were to give some advice to anybody about, again, growing their organization, growing their business, and figuring out, it's being involved in community. It's creating relationships with media outlets like yourself, where you can actually get your message out, talk a little bit more in depth about what you do on a daily basis, and how clients have great reactions to what you're doing, and the communication level. It's probably the biggest piece that I see is part of that communication level. And having the ability to share your messaging on a podcast, on a YouTube channel, on your your regular platform, whether or not it's a website or whatever that protocol is, it helps, I think, elevate your business and put you in to the limelight. It allows people to say, hey, they're real people. They do things on a daily basis that everybody does, and it helps us to be successful, or us, as individuals. I mean, having the knowledge and the expertise of being able to help somebody elevate their business is huge, and I know that's what you folks are doing every single day. So
You provide value first. You're giving something to someone, and eventually that gains their trust, because hey, I'm not asking for something, but I'm sure, for example, you'll sit down with potential mortgage buyers and give them all the advice, just like you did with me.
they're not buying mortgages; they're buying houses. But I mean,
yes, that's the way that.
Maybe they are buying mortgages. Maybe I'm thinking about it the wrong way. I mean, but yeah, maybe they're just buying mortgages and they're getting a house along with it. All right. We'll go with
Buy one, get one free.
Getting
How about that?
Being able to give the advice up front and being able to provide education gives people so much value. And then when they turn and they need additional help, that's when they can come to you.
One of the things that I've often found is that there are a lot of banks, a lot of institutions that just say that want to charge you up front for their consulting, their advice. Granted, it's valuable in some cases, and in some cases it's not, but they want to hook you by charging money up front to be consulted with. I've never done that. And it's always been the mindset that the knowledge and the expertise to set somebody up for success has been far more value than $200, $500, whatever that number is, whatever the number is. And for me, that's always been the big thing, is that I'd rather give you the advice and the direction and set you up, even if. And I've said this to so many clients over the years. Look, here's my advice. Here's the direction I would go, and you're asking for my opinion. My opinion is to do this. Here's the roadmap. Here's the landing pad for you to land on. Even if you don't use us as your facilitator, as your airplane to get you from A to Z and to land on that airport, that's okay. We're okay. I just want you to be happy with what your plan is. And if this helps you elevate you, even if you don't use us, it puts you in a much better position. So for me, that it's far more value, because I know that no matter what, that return is going to be there. And that return may be 5, 6, 7 years down the road. Because granted, in this industry, I mean, it's not like going to online trying to buy a product. It's not. That, hey, it's a reusable product. The average consumer has 3 mortgages in 10 years. So it's not very often. Usually it's a purchase, it's a refinance, and then it's another buy. So they, especially first-time home buyers, it's like purchase, refi, and then they buy again because they got to move up. Okay, that's a typical consumer. If others are looking at investment properties or anything else like that, I mean, it could be more. It could be 5, 6, 7 in 10 years. Just depends on their strategy and their plan. But a lot of that planning then also comes in. How do we put people in a good position if they have the mindset that I want to be a real estate investor? How do I help them? there's plans. I mean, we've talked about some stuff.
And
over the
I
years.
met you at a first-time homebuyer conference. Was the first time we met, and
Yep.
look where we are now. You gave all that value, got my interest sparked, and told me I could really do this, and we're doing it.
We laid out a plan, and you're executing. So the whole focus, though, is on the consumer. And he asked, what is the differentiator between us? Ours is based on that. It's focused on the consumer, not on me. If I can put more value to the consumer, I know that they will come back to me, no matter what. And even if they don't, I know that I've set them up in the right path.
Yeah.
So I can live, with my mindset clear that, I did the right thing.
Yeah. You are not the only person out there brokering mortgages. There's a lot of competition out there, right? So again,
there's a lot less now, but I mean,
you have to set yourself apart and do the things that other people won't do, and give people something so that you give them a reason to use you as their loan advisor.
Or even use you as a referral, because even like somebody may have changed circumstances, whatever, but the fact that you left them with that good taste in their mouth, that's right there for the next person.
part of what I've found in particular in just my personal business, because obviously I like I said, I still originate, I still help people. The thing that I found in my personal business is that we have client referrals that are probably 4 to 5 deep, which means help somebody a long time ago, their children, or their children's children, or their friends. Makes me feel old. Are coming back and using us as their resource, and that to me says, what, we may have not, definitely weren't perfect in the beginning. We've continued to learn and expand and build our repertoire of resources, knowledge, and everything else over the years. But even though back then we were still in the right path, which is we are helping people executing on a plan, which is helping them achieve what they wanted to achieve. And because of the things that we laid into that basis a long time ago, we're getting that residual business. In this industry, for those that are looking at getting started, it's not easy because there isn't any residual. It's not like you are, we'll just take insurance as an example. Insurance typically allows you as a insurance agent to potentially earn residual income on some of the policies that you have. It's a different philosophy, and we're not going to get into how to do that, but really, I mean, there's something that's built in. The only way that you can have residual client basis and build a business in the industry is to have that repeat client and or referrals, because it's not as if you have that client buying from you
they're not buying a house every month, right?
every year, whatever it might be. There's a segment of time in between, so you have to fill that gap. And so the key is to figure out how to fill that gap as quickly as possible.
Even if it's doing the things that don't scale in the moment.
Right. I mean, and it's hard to scale sometimes because you got to figure out those nuances. One of the things that we've started working on and building out is the educational programs for new loan officers coming into the industry. And I think, as I mentioned before, my son and I were talking about, how does he get involved? Well, it's the education piece. So we built some of those things out to help elevate new loan officers into becoming, senior advisors. And what does that scale look like? I often say that, for a loan originator, a mortgage advisor, to truly have a basis for understanding just the nuances of how to structure loans and put things together, so that way, and that doesn't even include some of the conversation, the consulting that goes into it, but for just structuring, it probably takes at least 100 transactions for them to really truly feel comfortable at knowing, here's how we need to structure this, and getting the experience. It's not just something you can pick up, you have to learn it. And it comes with having, I would say, a mentor. And so, we've developed a mentor program, developed this educational program, all of the things that we needed, that I certainly could have used when I was first getting started to become a better advisor from the very beginning. So, new loan officers coming in, I think they, if they follow some good instruction, they could probably elevate their game much faster. And, as an example, I mean, if you had a trainer or a mentor that said, hey, here's how you start your business, here's how you get your first, 1,000 clients or whatever it might be, Would that have been helpful?
Yes.
I mean, I think for any entrepreneur, I mean, if you're trying to figure that out, then trust me, there's some people that are extremely lucky at getting, doing something that's just beyond, and it grows viral, whatever it might be, and they get some access to it right away.
That's not the norm, though. That's
not the norm. It's a very small percentage, and it takes hard work, effort, and dedication to actually grow an industry and grow a business in any industry. So taking some of that away, providing them some leaps and bounds ahead of somebody else just coming in to try to do it on their own, I think is helpful. So that's why we've kind of gone in that direction now to help start educating and providing more value to loan officers. Because you know what, frankly, the average age, I think the last number I saw was like 58 or 59 in the mortgage industry. And that's, it's not old by any means, but I mean, it's not new young individuals, younger individuals coming into the business, which means that the industry itself is starving itself out. We need new blood. We need new people to come in and be part of the organization. So,
yeah, and being that mentor for your officers, I mean, you've gone through, you've had the experience, you've gone through, and you've made the mistakes, and you've had the successes, and you can help speed along someone's process and provide them with just the education that you've had over the years.
Well, I'd certainly like to think so. Obviously that experience in being able to provide somebody value in figuring out, how do we create a better environment for them to get started, to create a business that has longevity. And it doesn't matter what area, whether or not it's in Ohio or it's in Florida or it's here in Minnesota. What is it that they need, to create a business that's successful not only now, but 10 years from now, and it's doing the right thing up front.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to teach and train. And some of the things are, what do you do on a Sunday afternoon? Well, those are some tricks to the trade too.
Well, we greatly appreciate you sitting down with us, Jason. Is there anything you want to leave our viewers with as a final message? How can they reach out to you? Where can they learn more about your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously we're on the web. I mean, I think, the big part that we found is that, we love reviews. The reviews are awesome. They're amazing. They help elevate our business and be seen by other individuals who are looking for services, because the vast majority, like we talked about, start on the phone. They start with, some sort of a search engine to be able to find out who a company is, what do they represent, what do they do, are they somebody that, we feel comfortable doing business with.
Even if you get it as a referral, that's the first thing I do is check reviews or whatever.
Yeah. And so ultimately, you can find us on the web, of course. I've got a personal website at jasonmalmstrom.com. People can find some more information about us there. We've got some great reviews. They're all independent. So, I mean, I think for the vast majority of them, I mean, people have just said, hey, you know what, you guys have done a good job. And so you can find us there. Obviously, reach me directly. I'm going to give you my phone number. It's 218-348-5225. It's my main phone number. Got an office line too, but nobody ever calls me. So call me on my mobile, so you can always reach me there. And I mean, if there's anything else that comes up, that they have questions afterward, of course, then you can always email me too.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Jason, thank you so much,
gentlemen,
for taking the time to sit down with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.